let's go. So I'm gonna do one more video, and I'm gonna talk about why honesty matters why honesty controls resources. Because honesty is a lot like it's a lot like scientific laws, right? Right, you can say you can fly, right? When you can say that you can walk through air, right? But it doesn't change anything. Like, let's say the guy, and this is not a cop out quite yet. I'm trying to simplify what I'm talking about later. So let's say the guy, let's say the guy walks. Let's say you're a part of a large cult, right? That's a company, right? It's called Falcon X or whatever, right? Right, and then you've got a small business, right? You got one guy, right? And he says, let's say he has control over all the resources of all, let's say, the rocks, right? He's got a monopoly over rocks. So he can build a bunch of architecture. He can build a bunch of stonemasonry architecture, right? He's the biggest real estate firm, let's say, in the California. Let's just say that. Hypothetical. Right? Let's say he's got the biggest stonemasonry company, right? They're the biggest real estate because they're the only one, and the only materials that are being used to construct the houses are like, let's make it ridiculous, marble and quartz. Let's say that, right? And let's say you are poor, right? You want to start a stonemasonry company, and you have, like me, have like 50 grand in the bank. That's all you have, right? And they have like $1 billion. Yeah, so let's say you have all that money. I don't care. What does it matter? I only have one life to live. Why do I care? I don't even make that much money. So let's say that's true. So let's say all that's true. What happens if the guy who has no company backing says the truth, and he says, hey, look, like, and they're doing successfully. Let's say, hey, look, they're trying to engage in a venture of building houses. They're saying, hey, look, we're going to build a house, but we're going to build it by walking off a cliff on air, right? Now let's say everyone's on board with that decision, except the guy who is outside, who's competing against him. He has no way to start a company. So he decides to tell the truth, right? So, like, he's looking to control resources over the stone quartz. Right? He wants those resources. What if he tells the truth and he says, actually, you can't. You can't do that. Do you want to know why you can't do that? Because there's a rule, and I've tested this rule before. And this is the era of the Neolithic era, right? And the rule is you cannot actually walk on air. You're going to die. And he says, what are you talking about? The birds can, right? Obviously we can. And the guy says, no. The reason why you can't is because I once walked off the cliff one time and I almost fell down to the ground, but I suspected because my feet, right, my rock shoes are made out of the same composition as the air, as we function on a weight distribution scale, right? Right? I tested the individual weights of each object, right? And I tested me weighing like 200 pounds and the rock weighing like 5 pounds. And let's say, and he says, well, why does that matter? I follow the ordinance of God. And he says, well, so too do your holy artifacts, right? And anytime I purchased one of them before, and anytime I try to get them to walk, right, I throw them, right? It's just stay on the ground, right? You claim it walks. And they say it falls to the ground, right? That's your resource. So here, right there, the guy's trying to establish with nothing, right? He's establishing power, right? He's basically determining how you should spend your resources. That means indirectly he controls it. You see what's going on here? This is the power of social media if done right. At its most basic level, in the public square. Right? So he controls it. And now he says, hey, look, And now how can he use this influence? Well, that's obvious. He says, hey, I talked about this. Why don't you hire me for your company? You see how this game starts playing? And if you can't hire me, why don't you give me some resources? Because I have a better idea. Instead of just building on the air, why don't you instead just hire a painter? Just say your houses are built on air. Right? You control the resources because you're saying now if they don't hire you, everyone laughs, right? Because you explain the argument, you're talking about how you've tested stones, you've thrown it across a cliff, and they fall down, right? Aren't stones the same as humans, right? You think you're a rock person, just happens. Right? No, seriously. So the guy's like, well, if I don't buy you off, right? Everyone snickers. And so even the staff does, right? And he believes you, but he changes his mind, right? You now have indirect influence because you're not bought off by him. There's other ways, of course, but I mean, this is an example. Now, suddenly, he's like, I actually don't really want to listen to the CEO. I don't even want to listen to myself on this decision. After seeing those charts and diagrams, now I decide how your company funds. That guy, I give my decision-making power to him. When he comes up with something, I'm going to go listen. Right? I'll even give him resources if he does this long enough, right? Of course it happens. Indirectly. Now, if you buy him off, he gets indirect control. And so let's say you give him some resources, right? Because it happens. Like I say, hey, now next what you do is I want to do some reviews over your materials. And in a rational world, right, where people, in my opinion, we're more sane in terms of the monetary incentives, which we don't live in, by the way, because I just got kicked off of email marketing on Breitbart. That would not happen back in the old days, by the way. No, it wouldn't. There's death duels, gun duels. That won't happen. They just ignore you. Yeah, I don't know. There seemed to be a big website, bigger than that Godface. They're desperate. This is one of those sad transactions no one wants to talk about. So let's say the guy gets material. So now, before you know it, he has free material to start a business. And even if he doesn't get it, people will be like, well, if you can't even hire this guy, I'm not even going to let you control your own resource. The customers will decide. So many of them would just laugh their ass off at the company, right? And the staffers would agree. And he's like, well, they halt it. And he says, why don't? And so the business stops functioning. Somewhat. That doesn't mean it happens. That doesn't mean. The only way this works is if he turns against the company, right? Now, that's if he's not flexible with what his idea of what a business is. Now, if he's flexible, you don't care. All it forces is the corporation to get nicer, right? It incentivizes them, right? You're not buying them off. You're not giving them anything. He keeps suggesting ideas that are better than what you have, right? So you have indirect influence on how these resources are spent. Indirect control, that's my point. So how does this apply to Elon Musk? Indirect control. This is why I'm always talking about having an honest company, because an honest company would have bought him off by now. Right? There might be some people suggesting better ideas. And if you don't buy them off, all they do is have indirect control over your company. It's not really the CEO anymore, because it's the staffers that you delegate your decision making to. So let's say, I don't know what the competitors for SpaceX is. So right now, Elon Musk prefers a cluster of engines to fuel his rockets, right? And let's say, I don't know what we got, but let's say I don't really know what his SpaceX rockets are made out of. That's probably proprietary technology. I could be wrong. I don't know too much. So let's say the rockets are made out of 4 dual sets of Andromeda cluster rockets, right? I'm not saying it is. Yeah, I'm not saying it happens that way. Maybe these cluster engines are all inserted inside the SpaceX rocket interframe. No, and yeah, and let's say it happens. Now, let's say what if someone suggests a new model? I'm not saying it happens, right? I'm saying, well, they want a cluster of engine. They don't want a cluster of engines. They think maybe one engine will be a better jet fuel propulsion system for the rocket. I'm not saying it's real. It's just a ridiculous scenario. I'm unqualified. I barely got through actuarial science, so I'm not qualified to talk about any of this. Let's say the guy who suggests that idea does not have any money. This is one of the ways. This is one of those. So you may not want to start your own business, but you can get indirect influence. This is one of those a-hole games that no one wants to talk about. Let's see, all the math and the numbers are done, right? And this is how you attack. Now, maybe you say, well, actually, no one's actually, the reality is that money that's coming in, right? Just actually, let's say what if you find out, and the guy does it, right? Because if you're honest, right, you find out. What if you find out that a lot of the cost for the suppliers is all like smoke? Because I think, I could be wrong, Elon delegates all of his suppliers. He might not even double check. Right? I sleep on the factory floor, I work hard, but I don't always, right? I definitely do not double check what the cost of each inventory is. And he says, actually, the reason why it's a better system is because while it's more efficient, you're paying 5 times more, right? So you're not making as much. Because they're lying to you about the cost of the material. And he's saying, well, the Ultimate is better because it might be more easily marketable because the design looks sleeker. I'm not saying it's better in terms of performance, but in terms of marketing value. And maybe you want to start marketing first before you go to the performance status, because it doesn't seem like there's a lot of money going to SpaceX these days. I'm not saying it's true. And if you're with a company of dishonest people, they'll never tell you that. They'll just change their mind. And before you know it, that guy who told the truth gets indirect influence. Elon's like, well, that's a nice guy, right? He gets indirect influence. Now, if he got bought off and he was honest, like, actually, we need to buy him off because we're actually full of shit. Elon still keeps direct influence over his company, right? While keeping the other guy from growing in power because the honest person the only honest people can keep honest people in check. It doesn't work with dishonest people. Dishonest people cannot keep honest people in check, at least within that scenario. Otherwise, they wouldn't be able to keep their job because they need to keep their job somehow. Right? Getting an honest person disrupts the corporate work culture too much. This is where politics comes in. I'm well aware of that. You have to know. Now, you could be dishonest and still do that, but you have to know when to be honest. That would be the right time to be honest. Right? There's no such thing as a truly honest person out there, but you have to know when. When people are talking about honest people, they're talking about people who actually know when it's time to stop lying. That's a subjective phrase, but you know what I mean. Right? And I'll tell you how you know when you're actually honest. People accuse you of stuff. It ruffles people's feathers. Not all the time, but most of the time I've seen, yeah. It always ruffles people's feathers. Like, oh, hey, look, I cheated on you that one time, right? Honesty doesn't always have to, but anytime you're honest, people usually call you crazy, right? Of some variance. That's why no one wants to be honest these days. If you ever look at Carlin, he just kind of passed away. People are like, well, he's the last genuine comedian you've seen, right? He ruffles quite a lot of feathers. Yeah, it's true. You just got to think about this. Oh yeah, if anyone asks, please donate to my Zelle page. In my eBay store. I don't have a link post up. I'll post it up later. Anyways, just look around. I don't know if honest people exist in the corporate landscape. I don't even know if that's possible. You have to be really intelligent to be honest. And I think integrity is sadly probably the key thing for any corporation. It's not really how many tests you pass, right? So when a lot of people are saying like, oh, like grades don't matter, right? You should be higher than C+. The professors never take the time. I don't think they even know what they're talking about. They says they should be talking about how it can destroy the company that you're getting hired by. Doesn't matter how smart you are. Smart people can destroy companies pretty fast. If anything, it's only faster. Right? They need to have some integrity. Because if they don't have integrity, they'll use their intelligence to run loopholes around the CEO so they can get more money, right? So integrity is the first, but you don't even get that in the job application process these days. What you get is just people lying to each other, set of job requirements. Hey, I hire you. Honestly, the honest conversation of a job, and I don't like it because I still want to get paid more. Since it's already over for me, I'll just say it'll be like, hey, I'm not really sure what I want these days. I really don't know what I want. This sounds like something I want. I don't know. What do I want? That's the same decision for any big company, CEO of a big company. What do I want? Those look nice. I know the employees that are using it. Right? I know that part. But I really, really, really don't know if I actually need it for my company, right? Because I need to sell units, right, at the end of the day. It doesn't matter. They look nice. I'm a programmer back in the day. I think they look cool, but I'm not seeing any customers buying it. I'm not seeing any sales receipts. Yeah, I want to see something, right? I'm more than willing to rethink my considerations of what a senior programmer is, right? Right? Maybe it's just some guy who freelanced for HTML and CSS. I don't know, right? I really don't know. And that's the job field we have today. Yeah, right? Maybe that helps you make the company more. Maybe you need to work for free for me for a while, right? I don't know. What do I know? Maybe I'll have more realistic sales margins then, right? Maybe I just want an honest person. Maybe I never wanted a programmer who's willing to run fire and break the ice in the office. Maybe that's what I've always wanted. Now, it's like, well, as CEO, you have better think. No, it's important to focus on the job because you're delegating your tasks to them. That's why you have to, when your company is about to be bankrupt, which SpaceX may or may not be in, right? I suspect there's a lot of questions because Elon's exploring space. But there's no immediate payoff for that job. I suspect they're not really making any sales for the last couple of years. How do they? That's an industry that's opaque, really opaque. It's almost like that lawsuit they had with SpaceX versus Big Blue was kind of a waste of time. I think SpaceX would have collapsed by itself. No, seriously. Amazon, Jeff has Amazon, right? He actually is part of an essential industry. PayPal is an essential industry. But SpaceX, rockets, I don't know. Do we really need rockets at the end of the day? I'm just trying to be honest right now, right? I'm giving you a real life demonstration of honesty being indirect influence, right? Right? You have to ask yourself, how does space, and this is why the reason why I'm very skeptical of the financial paperwork of SpaceX. Don't get me wrong, actuaries, there's an actuary that saved his life, but here's the thing, that's an insurance policy. That's not the same as financials of the company. I don't know, maybe the accountant's telling the truth. Maybe SpaceX is making money. I'd love to hear something. What's the actual numbers, right? People run funny numbers, do funny whiz magic all the time. That explains why Elon had to go into the car industry, because he didn't feel like SpaceX made him enough money. That doesn't mean he's not succeeding. I'm just saying I kind of wonder sometimes. And his billions he keeps, does he even control what he spends on it, right? He still has to reinvest. I think Elon's good at selling. I definitely do not deny that. Right, but the very industry he's entering into, questionable, very questionable. Now, I'm surprised SpaceX hasn't worked with Amazon to advertise SpaceX rockets, right? I'm surprised they engaged in a lawsuit battle. Seems like a waste of time because SpaceX was going to collapse anyways. Oh no, you watch, because I don't see anything really honest about how much money they're making. In my opinion, my gut feeling, my sixth sense. It was going to probably collapse in maybe the next 10 years or so. He didn't have to compete. No, if you can't colonize or find alien life, isn't that just end all be all? At that point, you just don't make any money, period. Don't get me wrong, you need to explore. Right? And there's definitely a real need to explore stuff. I definitely believe that. I believe that entirely. But the problem is Elon Musk made now Starlink, I think, is making money. That's the only one, probably the only product that I think is actually making money, in my uninformed opinion. And one of the reasons why, because now as a CEO, because people lie about sales numbers all the time. You ever see any of those awkward office skits cringe about people trying to puff up their numbers so they don't get fired or get a performance review? Elon's I saw it on LinkedIn one time. He's a very intimidating CEO. I don't see it anymore. LinkedIn's been giving warning signals of SpaceX collapsing for a while now. Now, they don't interpret it as such, but there's been a lot of weird warning signs. I want to ask now. If I hear something, here's what something genuine looks like. We're making sales, but we're reporting losses, but we're getting charity money. That sounds like an honest conversation. That is an honest conversation. It's a public essential need. I'm receiving private donations that would have otherwise went to the U.S. government to SpaceX. That's an honest conversation on how much sales are being made. That doesn't mean you should stop. I'm just saying. What's the conversation? What's the numbers? Maybe the numbers look good. Right? SpaceX is heading towards the Challenger disaster, right? Where we're getting a repeat of that. Right? And I'm noticing that because Elon Musk says he prefers a cluster of engines, right? So here's the thing. Here's what I would think. Here's what I think you should do at this point in time. And I know this sounds like some crazy dipshit theory. Right? The rocket has 27 engines. So here's the thing. I want to hear some transparent conversation on some proprietary territory. Why? Because you don't know what you shouldn't be able to make profit right now until you actually start colonizing stuff. It literally does not matter what the actual ingredients of the rocket are. Because space, if you think about it, space rockets represent the airplane industry. It's all about the food and tourism, right? No, it should not be kept secret. That's why I don't think it's making any money. There's a reason, people might. He might say, I'm not sure if I believe that, but think about it. Where do you make your money back? It's food. Doesn't this operate like the airplane industry? If you thought about how it makes money, I wonder who's debating about this. I should see this on the news somewhere. I'm not seeing any economic models being debated about, hey, look, this is like the airplane industry. There's a waitress, right? She's serving you rocket food to the customers. And now it becomes proprietary around like the third model once you successfully colonize a planet. That is the same decision now. No, you should be public for now until you actually successfully find alien life or find a planet that people can safely port back in and out to, right? You should not be private in the beginning. That's why I think there's a lot of bullshitting going on in SpaceX. All right, this is on Ars Technica. Musk explains why SpaceX prefers clusters of small engines. I don't know what it's made out of. That concerns me because we can keep secrets once we actually colonize stuff, right? From a Thomas Edison capitalistic standpoint. There is no profit being made in keeping stuff private right now. And I wouldn't say just SpaceX, for any rocket company. Do you really think there's money made until you colonize stuff? You might as well just form a conglomerate around the competing rocket fuel companies, right? right? Profits don't mean anything until you colonize stuff. Then profits can become a real question. It doesn't matter how big you are. So what ends up happening if you do that is the public says, okay, we're going to give you $1 billion every year, right, Elon Musk? We're going to kickstart you. It doesn't matter whether you make money or not. You're an essential good for the American people. Right? Here's your military funding, right? We're gonna vote for Biden to mandate an executive order. Right? You can put the "you shall now pass," right? Capitalism. Right? That would be an honest conversation about SpaceX. I don't know if the numbers are real, dude. Now, people don't like me in general. That's why and they don't like me because I say this kind of stuff. What numbers? Hugly bubbly? There's no numbers. You just have people with a silver spoon who graduated from school. That's all you have. No, I'm okay with that. If I could get a higher paying job from school, I'm okay with that. But at this point, I don't know how else you can put it. Right? And this is a product of people who, they should have contemplated that. That would have made news, wouldn't it? They're not contemplating that. There's obviously standardization. People don't understand what they're learning in school. Because anyone who graduated with a degree in that would have thought about that by now. And instead of saying, hey, look, Elon Musk is cool, right? Right? Not Elon Musk could be homeless. I'm just telling you, with the way it's developing right now, we could be heading for a Challenger disaster of a different kind. Monetary, of course. And both, of course. I'm curious. Okay. I honestly would have seen an Amazon SpaceX collaboration. Amazon's the airplane industry, right? They just sell food, Whole Foods. Hi, Elon, I'm just your friendly waitress, right? No offense. It's just kind of one of those sad jobs the CEO of Amazon has to do, right? I'm your bartender. Right? Because you're barred from discussing this. Or Jeff is going to fire his laser 4chan meme mimes, right? Lex Luthor laser eyes. Yeah, he is the airplane food industry. How is he not? Right? Some of the airplane food, I bet, was purchased from Amazon. So, you know. Right? And Elon, instead of rockets, maybe he should have entered into the airplane industry, right? Where there were established profit margins. I'm not saying you can't, right? Work together with Boeing. This is not a end-all, be-all, right? You should be Peter Thiel first before you're a capitalist shark, right? Be friendly first. I don't understand. What's up. Elon seems like he's financially struggling. He's in these car industries. He's everywhere, and I'm kind of like, what's going on with him? He should be friendly. I was always wondering, like, now I thought about it, I was like, why are they enemies? Big Blue, it doesn't matter. Someone needs to colonize space first. Then we can start competing. That's the sane way out. Think about how Christopher Columbus got to the Americas. He worked together with people, right? Now, once we can travel and establish those maps, then we can start competing. Everything goes in stages in life. Right? I could be wrong, right? Maybe all these college degree people, diplomas, I hate lambasting them because I don't know how else to describe this. This is a product of the school system, right? It's a product of people who use Chegg 80% of the time on their courses, right? I do that, I'd be honest, right? Because I'm desperate. It's a product of people using Slater, right? It's a product of people using too many tutors to get hired at a company like that. No, seriously, ask a transparent conversation on this. Because what happens is when you do that, you don't actually understand what's going on. Sure, you're seeing stuff being made, but do you actually truly understand what's going on? Because it doesn't matter if it's an SOA exam. You know how to game it. There's always ways to game the system. You don't want people who are gaming stuff. You want people who can game stuff in the right way. Have the transparent conversation. I want to ask, how are you puffing the sales numbers? Are you puffing those data sheets? right? Are you puffing it? Did you buy the? At that point, you might as well ask, like after it reveals if it was a scam, just say, hey, did you purchase test answers that one time? No, I'm sorry. That's the transparent conversation no one wants to have. Right? People puff up in the interview every time, don't they? They dress nice. That's called puffing your chest. Their hair's done right. That's called puffing your chest. People just assume it has value. People forgot about that in the past, like in the present. That assumption's not exactly real when it truly comes down to it. Right? Ever wonder why the smelly kid's hired as the smartest guy in the office? That's why. Because he's not selling you something. Right? He's willing to work without pay. He's not selling you BS. Right? He later becomes a respectful business owner because he's like, I really do not like playing these games. Right, the smelly guy, you may not like at first, but at least he's saying, hey, these are real sales numbers. I will literally show you on the fact for how something is made for me. Right? I'm not showing you something digital with a CAD machine, right? I'm showing you something real. Yeah, I want to ask about the financials. Now, if they don't have a conversation, they just want to run away. Well, that's a bad sign for your company. It's a really bad sign. I want to see some sales receipts. That's called the college guy runs away. You ask. If it doesn't happen, I'm really concerned about the future of any business, really. That's very concerning because you want your company to make money. Now, if it's charity, okay, well, then you don't really need them, right? Right? Nothing matters. Nothing you learn, what in school, no matter how complex it is, no matter how beautiful it is, it doesn't matter unless the customer buys stuff. And going to the whole purpose of school is so you can avoid that capitalist reality. That's the whole purpose of school. Now there's business, of course, don't get me wrong, but for the most part, that is the main purpose of school, is to avoid the customer, right? With the exception of sales and business, of course. That doesn't mean certain fields can't translate as sales, don't get me wrong, but for the most part, people are always talking about job security, right? Yeah, they're talking about high pay, right? That's just keyword for I want to avoid the reality of trying to please the customer to get a product done while getting money. Now, schools can be friendlier, don't get me wrong, but with the way things are organized right now, it just seems like schools are more, like the college grads are more interested in getting money from the rich guy and not necessarily guaranteeing the company remains profitable. Right? That's what it appears to be. I could be wrong. Maybe it's not a Sith cloud of darkness, right? I don't know. Right? I'm a homeschooler now at this point because of my learning disability. But that's just what I think after deeply thinking about this for a while. Anyways.